by now, of course, I've done my dry fit, and my next step in the process is going to be to take all these pieces and turn them and lay them over so that I'm gluing the proper edge. After it's glued together, all the faces that you're looking at right now are going to become planed and smooth before we cut it into an end grain board. The last one doesn't need to be turned because we'll glue the first one into it. As I look at these edges, some of these edges have some burn marks, but they are still straight and smooth, so I'm not going to concern myself too much. The dry fit went together right, so I'm not going to concern myself if it doesn't look completely perfect. You're never going to see that burnt edge, and it does fit together with the previous piece. If I had a very thin piece on this edge, I would want to use a supporting strip of wood called a caul. The purpose of the caul, like a block of wood like this, would be to help keep that edge nice and straight. That would be if I had a strip that was a half or a quarter of an inch wide. Because I have a full 3/4 inch piece here, I'm not going to need to put a caul between the wood and the jaws of the clamps. This piece is going to stay straight on its own. So again, if you have a strip on your board that is a half or a quarter of an inch wide, you'll want to use a caul between it and the jaws of the clamp to support it. Since I don't have that, we're not going to bother with that caul. I'm not going to be applying so much clamp pressure that I'm going to cause any damage to the wood here. And so another purpose of a caul would be to protect your board from the jaws of the clamp. But in this application, being that we're working with all hardwoods, we're not going to have any problems with that. And if you're having to apply that much pressure where you're damaging the wood, you probably didn't have something fitting right to begin with. So now it's just a matter of going through the process of applying the glue to each strip. As you probably know by now, I'm a fan of using too much glue rather than too little. You'll once in a while see people, if you watch videos on YouTube or anything, you'll see people use like a brush to spread the glue, or a roller. A roller works great when all the pieces are exactly the same width. Because we have a varying width here, you have to roll each piece individually, so it really we make kind of a pain. So we could take a brush, and we take that brush and brush out these pieces. But another way to do it is just to tip it up to the piece next to it, and this is called airing the joint. You rub it back and forth like that. You want it to end up, I'm going to work on making one end flush here. And once you've done that, if you open it up, you'll see that you've got good glue coverage on the whole piece. So it really achieves the same thing as brushing it. And this way we don't waste a bunch of brushes. So now I'm just going to go through the process of tipping each one of these into place, airing the joint, the thing that I'm paying attention to is keeping it even on one end. These pieces are not all exactly the same length, but it's going to be helpful. I can keep them fairly even on one end just so I don't lose a bunch of length. I think I want to put a hair more glue on this one. It looks good. You'll notice I gloved up for this. If you didn't glove up, you could simply just wash your hands when you're done. This is going to be a water cleanup. I've got the 3 clamps equally spaced. We're using either the aluminum bar clamps or the red sliding bar clamps. They're going to do the best job of laying flat on a flat surface and supporting the material right. Before I started, I cranked all these handles back so that I had all the threads to work with. If you take this clamp and you start with these jaws cranked all the way in, when you go to tighten it up, so if this is cranked all the way in like this, if you slide up your follower here, you won't have any more room to tighten the clamp. So as you start the setup process, again, this is why some of the setup takes so long, take and slide all of these, or crank all of these handles back so you have all the threads to work with.
And also it's a good habit to get in just to make sure that that's sliding fairly easily across there. You don't want to get partway into your glue project and then realize that the last guy left a bunch of glue on the clamp, making it impossible for you to slide that back and forth. So now that I've got the followers pulled up, I'm going to start on one end. This is my flush end, so I'll start here. I'm going to make sure that I'm holding this down flush on the table, or flush on the clamp. And I'm just going to put enough pressure just to hold it in place for now. There are additional cauls we can put on the face. If your pieces are bowing up and down, we can put additional cauls on the face, and that would be just a matter of going to the box, finding a caul that is the right length to fit between the jaws of the clamp, and we would actually take a parallel jaw clamp and squeeze that down on the table. It doesn't look like I'm going to need it in this application because these pieces were all pretty straight, but sometimes you'll have a piece that's bowed where you'll need to take care of that. Just going to work my way down here. Again, I'm not putting full clamp pressure yet. I'm just putting enough pressure to hold the pieces in place. This is where you might start to see some of these things popping up or down. Sometimes just due to the glue they want to slide around. So I'm just checking it to make sure that I've got it as even as I can. Again, if it wasn't becoming even, some people will get a rubber mallet and tap it down. I prefer to use brains over brawn. We'll just use a clamp to squeeze it down. So again, if it wasn't squeezing down, we would take a caul, put it across here, and we would squeeze it down using another block of wood like this. Now that I've got enough pressure to hold it in place, I'm going to come through here and start doing some initial wiping. When you glue it up on the edge grain, you can wipe it off with a damp rag. You're not going to be using a damp rag when we glue it up as an end grain board, because that has a habit of pushing some of that glue into the end grain and making it very difficult to sand out later. All my pieces closed up really nicely. I'm just going to go through now and make sure that the clamps are good and tight. And there's too much space between the clamps right now. If you clamped it like this and left it, there's a chance that you might have some small gaps appearing on the clamping surfaces between the clamps where we're not getting enough squeeze this way. So that's going to be the purpose of these additional clamps I brought out. As I put these clamps on, if you stick them all the way down, sometimes more glue will squeeze out and get onto the jaws of the clamp. So as you put it on there, lift it up a little bit and kind of float it out so that it's not right down on the surface. Some of you will be using longer clamps. You may have noticed I have some of the 24-inch clamps and I've got 136. That's just the size of clamps that were available. So that additional clamping caused a little bit more glue to squeeze out. One really important thing that I haven't mentioned yet, this is a donation board. And so this was made out of just scrap pieces that were left over. There was no set plan for it. If you are gluing up your own board, it's going to be very important that you're executing the plan and making sure that you have things in the proper order, whether it's cherry, mahogany, oak, purple heart, whatever the case may be, making sure you put things in the proper order. Because again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, one of the important things is executing the plan. So we've got that clamped up. This is going to be one of the most important steps for you having not to do a pile of work when you come back tomorrow. You're going to pop these clamps off the back, and we'll just go one clamp at a time and wipe off all the glue. This is going to save you so much time when you come back to the project the next time, because if you don't do this step, you're gonna have to scrape off all this glue. And as you've probably come to find out from your previous experiences, the glue does not scrape off easily. So I'm just gonna go one clamp at a time, fold that over, wiping. If you're doing this and you feel like your rag is becoming saturated with glue, by all means, go wring it out and start fresh. And we'll get the last one here. So again, now that I've done that, there's a gap underneath here. The clamp is floated out off the surface. Once it's glued up like that, we need to leave this in the clamps for approximately half hour to 45 minutes. So in most cases, you're gonna glue this, you're gonna put it back in the cage, and we're gonna let it dry. If you happen to glue it up right at the beginning of a class, you could probably take the clamps off at the end of the class, but I would err on the side of leaving the clamps on if you're not sure, because we don't want this thing, we don't want any gaps to open up, because any gaps that open up in it now is going to make the end product look like it was built by some kind of amateur and not a wily old veteran like yourself. So that's all ready for storage now. We're going to double check to make sure all the clamps are tight. Maybe double check the other side and make sure no additional glue squeezed out. If it did, give it a wipe. And then we're gonna take that, we're gonna stand it up in the storage area, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. When you're done, you can see all that glue that you're not gonna have to scrape off tomorrow. When you're done, just take that paper and throw it away. Put your rag in the sink, rinse it out, and we're good till the next day.